Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Had a good week. We're going to jump back into basically the devotional we had 2 weeks ago, because last week's one was kind of a special one-off. So, what is this week's one's about?
So like you said 2 weeks ago, we had talked about walking with the Spirit, right? Walking in the Spirit. So we're going to talk about self-inflicted wounds, which are things that can maybe hinder that walk or prevent that walk, right? So this is our next verse.
Part 2.
Yes. So our next verse, we're still in Galatians, right? So this is the next thing. It's Galatians 5:19 through 21. It says, the acts of the flesh are obvious: immorality, impurity, and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God, right? So here we are talking about self-inflicted wounds. So I did not play sports in high school, but I was in theater and in choir. Those were my big...
I played sports. I wasn't good, but I played sports.
But, in theater, if there were a time where I had hurt my voice, I didn't continue to speak on stage or sing. If it was a musical, I had to take a few days off because I would then continue to hurt my voice. There's actually a time where I had injured myself on stage and my knee was like really swollen. I really hurt myself. The doctor gave me some steroids for my knee, and he told me to stay off of it. But we were really close to showtime, and I needed to be on stage, and I didn't listen to him. So my knee still hurts because of that. Like I should have taken the time off to help my knee. So not only did it take longer for my knee to heal, but I've now increased that injury, and it's still kind of something that I live with today, right? Self-inflicted wound. It's a wound that could have healed, but I decided that I didn't want to take the time to heal the wound, and I kind of exacerbated it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about those things in theater, it kind of makes me think about this verse about, self-inflicted wounds, right? So, like I said, when we were talking about walking in the Spirit, these self-inflicted wounds, they hinder that walk. So everything on that list that I read, they hold you back from becoming the person you want to become in God, right? So I'm going to say that again. They hold you back from becoming the person you want to become in God. I think that's pretty heavy. So while God calls us to a life centered on others, right? We had actually talked about this last week when we talked about we need to love, listen, and then carry others' burdens. So God does call us to a life centered around others, okay? And it's a much better life, I can say. I've lived a selfish life, and then in living this life as a Christian and living a life for others, it's just much better life, I can say that.
You can never satisfy yourself, but you can always satisfy someone else's need.
Mm-hmm. So. And it just feels better, honestly. It feels better to do good things.
That's kind of why, because you're constantly trying to fill yourself up and you can't do it. So the best way you do that is by filling someone else up.
Very much so. I like that. So this list is all about pleasing yourself, like Levi said, right? It's all about pleasing you. So while God calls us to a life of sacrifice, this list is all about indulging. So he calls us to a life of serving others, and this list is about yourself. He calls us to a life, goodness. A life of self-sacrifice, and this list is about indulging yourself, right? So the complete opposite of what God calls us to do. And so the fruit of that list that we just talked about, it's not joy, it's not peace, it's not patience, it's none of those things, right?
Not the fruits of the Spirit.
It is not the fruits of the Spirit, which is what we'll be talking about next week.
Spoiler.
It is not. This is, like I said, the opposite of what calls us to do. And so you get the opposite of the fruits of the Spirit. Like Levi said, you're never able to fill yourself up, and so you're never able to be satisfied when you are self-indulgent and selfish, right? So the fruit of these actions that we've just talked about, this list, it's guilt and shame and fear. It's isolation. It's broken relationships.
Yucky stuff.
Yeah, much more. Yeah, that's really some really deep stuff. I can say, once again, the comparison of my life before Christ to my life now with Christ, it's fear, there's isolation, there's definitely broken relationships. It's all very just not good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the joy that we want or the peace and the patience. So something that we want you to remember is that these things aren't bad for you because they're on the list. They are on the list because God knows they are bad for you, and He loves you and wants you to keep you from harm, right? So He knows these things are bad for you. He loves you, and He wants to keep you from harm. And so these are on the list of things that we should not, that aren't going to bring us the fruits of the Spirit.
It's kind of like a caution sign, like don't do this or you're going to get hurt.
Yes. It's kind of like when your parents tell you that. Don't do this or you're going to get hurt.
Well, He is your Father. So.
Exactly. So, and if you were anything like me, you did it anyways and then realized, yep, that hurt. So, but you don't want to do that here, right? So yes, our Father is telling us caution. But what is really important over everything is this beautiful story of the gospel, right? So every time you struggle with one of these, you can go to God for forgiveness and healing. And He forgives you and He heals you. And then you start fresh, right? So every time there's a self-inflicted wound, there's God. And you go to Him and He heals you, right? You start new. So part of this walk, when we're talking about walking in the Spirit, it's not about being perfect. It's not about perfection and, 100% doing everything exactly right. That's not something that we are capable of doing anyways. So it's not about being perfect. It's about course correction, right? So it's about knowing that you need to be walking in the Spirit and with the Spirit and correcting that course when you do go astray. You're able to read, okay, well, maybe I was self-indulgent, and so now I'm off course, and I need to correct that, right? And the Spirit will let you know as well. That's like we said like we said 2 weeks ago, when you walk with the Spirit.
It's your compass that helps you stay on that path.
Yes, you start to inherit, characteristics of God, and then the Spirit speaks to you, and you're able to realize, yeah, wait, this isn't right.
Mm-hmm.
I may have messed up. So when you fall in whatever areas you struggle with on that list, just turn to God. He accepts you immediately. He always has, and He always will. But when you turn to Him, when you've fallen, you find forgiveness from God. And you learn to forgive yourself. So you find His healing and His forgiveness. And then you just keep walking, right? You correct your course and you keep walking in the Spirit. So praise God for His love and His forgiveness, because He's the only one who loves us the way He does and can forgive us the way He can, right? We are never too far from gone to turn back.
We have a dog trying to interrupt our lesson.
Yes,
here.
he's making it a little bit shaky. You're never too far from gone to turn back. Like I said, my life, I grew up in church, but I had turned from God as a teenager and into my early 20s. And when I started to find Him again, at first it felt like I was too far gone to turn back and ask Him for forgiveness or to even find Him again. But that wasn't the case. Immediately when I started to turn back to Christ, there were open arms and there was forgiveness, and it was wonderful. So you are never too far gone to turn back to God, no matter what.
But there's kind of another side to it too, whereas you're just not seeking Him at all, and you're just content with where you are. That's kind of a dangerous place to be too. It's like, well, I'm okay. Well, you check yourself and make sure you actually are seeking God, because even if you're not seeking Him because you think you're okay, that could be a dangerous place to be too.
Most certainly, yeah, that's definitely true. And you'll be able to see that, when we talk next week about fruits of the Spirit, you'll be able to see, that you are moving forward in your walk. You're not stagnant in your walk, because you are producing that fruit, right? The good fruit. So just remember, we're never in too deep that he can't pull us out. But like Levi said, don't stagnate.
It's better to produce good fruit than to not produce any or to produce bad fruit. Like, both of those are bad options. You always see the best option is to produce good fruit.
It's very true. Yes. But when you are struggling and when you are falling, God is always there with his love and his forgiveness and his healing. He's able to heal those self-inflicted wounds. So that is something we wanted you guys to remember this week. So I will say the verse again. It is Galatians 5:19 through 21. Your homework for this week, I want you to look through that list and maybe say, okay, this might be a failing of mine. This might be something I need to watch out for.
This is a bad fruit.
This is a bad fruit, and this is something I need to watch out for. This may be a self-inflicted wound. Because I was going to say, I definitely went through that list and was like, okay.
There's mine.
There is mine. So it's good to know what you have to look out for, what you're prone to, and that will definitely help you in your walk. But this is running a little long, so so that was it for this week, really.
And hopefully you guys can have something to say in the comments, because we have been checking them. So put something down in the comments below and we'll read, and if it's worth replying to, we will start a little conversation. Till then, see you
Bye,
guys.